Hello, hi, and welcome to this episode of the Mandy Mayer podcast. As per usual, this is a podcast where we chat all about your health and fat loss expedition, about you reaching, achieving, and smashing those goals on this expedition of yours. Let's get straight into today's episode of this podcast. So, just to give you a bit of a background story, I started TikTok, I think it was like in May 2 years ago or something like that. TikTok has never been a major sort of platform for me. It was always either Instagram or Facebook, or like in 2017, I actually started with writing a blog, and the blog was called Running for Mayor. But like I said, my main focus was always just Instagram or Facebook, and I wasn't quite clued up on how TikTok worked because I believed TikTok was literally just there for dancing videos. Until one day I was like, let me just try and post my educational videos on health and fat loss on TikTok and let's see how it goes. Now, TikTok and Instagram have different settings, whereas in Instagram, you can't turn off the DMs. So anyone can DM you, as far as I believe. Believe me, at some stage, I did try and turn off the DMs just because it was just so overwhelming. But on TikTok, I think there's a function that you can actually turn off the DMs and people can't message you, or they can try and message you, but it won't come through to you. And I didn't actually know this because, like I said, TikTok was just like it was there and I was posting videos to it, okay? Now, I look at it and I'm like, shit, okay, I haven't been getting messages from people on TikTok. And I'm like, that's fine, it's not a problem. I'm like, people are watching the videos on TikTok and, so be it. Until the other day, I was like scrolling through, I'm like, I can actually see some messages here from people on TikTok. I'm like, what's this all about? And then I looked at it and I actually think my settings for TikTok were totally fucked. Like, I don't think people could send me DMs on TikTok, or if they could, they weren't coming through to me, or I wasn't getting notified by them, or probably just overlooking them. So I go into my inbox in TikTok the other day and I had a look at it and I saw, obviously there's loads of messages. So now I've got to try and get back to people, and I'm obviously going to look like a poople because some of the messages are like from like a year ago. My bad. If that is you that sent me a message a year ago on TikTok, I humbly apologize. Like, I didn't know. I apologize. There's no other way to say it. I apologize for not getting back to your DMs on TikTok. Okay, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because I do try my best to get back to DMs and messages from everyone. Obviously, there's times where I miss them on Instagram or on Facebook because it is a lot, if I'm very honest. So I do try and get back to most of them, and sometimes I see the DMs and I might not necessarily get back to them, but I do make podcast episodes about it, or I do make content about it so that it can still help you. But there was a DM that stood out for me within my TikTok account, and I want to chat about that on this episode of this podcast. And it reads as follows. This was from August the 12th, right? So it's not such a delayed response. Okay, Asha, I feel really bad for not getting back to DMs on TikTok. I do apologize. Okay. Good morning. Hope you are doing well. Doing fantastic. Thank you very much for asking. And it's such a polite, now I feel even worse because it's such a polite introduction. I've been following your tips for a while now. I need a bit of guidance, please. She's even asking please, which most people don't. I started with eating healthier and using the treadmill 20 minutes every day as I start. I only lost 3 kilograms in 3 weeks. Any tips would be appreciated. I'm going to repeat the part that stood out for me. I only lost 3 kilograms in 3 weeks. That is a lot. That is a fuck ton. Sorry for swearing. No, I'm not sorry for swearing. That's a huge amount. 3 kilograms in 3 weeks. That is phenomenal. I want you to remove the word only from that and say, I have lost 3 kilograms in 3 weeks. I go to the second part where you ask, any tips would be appreciated, please. It doesn't seem like you need my tips because 3 kilograms in 3 weeks, it is massive. It is massive progress. Now, the reason why I wanted to chat about this message is because people's levels of expectations are just so skewed from years and years and years of being fed diet culture, diet mentality, diet information. You need to be as skinny as possible. You need to be as lean as possible. You need to lose as much as possible. And people have this idea that you need to lose like 2 or 3 kilograms every week to be successful. What fucking world are we living in? Like, for me, a sustainable amount of weight loss every week is around 500 grams. In saying that, please remember I have done an episode where I have mentioned that if you have got a lot more body fat to lose, then maybe you will be losing weight a little bit faster on a weekly basis as opposed to someone who doesn't have a lot of body fat to lose. But in general, on paper, on average, you're looking at around a 500 gram loss per week, which is sustainable, right? So if you look at it and you say to me, Mandy, I've only lost 1 kilogram per week, I'm like, fuck, far out. That is a lot. That is a lot. So again, we need to look at starting to change that mindset around that number on the scale. We really need to look at starting to change those levels of expectations when it comes to the speed of the decrease in that number on the scale. Because a lot of the times now you will feel like you're doing something wrong, even though you're doing everything right and you are absolutely smashing it. And because those levels of expectations are, I want to say, unrealistic, even though you are doing a phenomenal job already. But now you might feel as though what you're doing is not working, but it is working. But it is working. And oftentimes it's those unrealistic expectations that lead people to actually quitting, even though they are already making so much progress. So again, I'm going to keep this episode short. Your expectations matter far more than what you actually think. Please, please, please be realistic about your expectations. And I want to say, you know what? Yes, we look at the scale and we use that as measuring progress. But again, there's progress in so many other areas. If you're losing 1 kilogram per week, okay, what I would say, obviously, number one, well done. You've started your health and fat loss expedition. You're starting by walking on the treadmill. You're getting more active. You're changing your food choices. That for me is amazing. That is phenomenal, right? You losing weight on the scale. I'm sure there's loads of other areas that you're making progress in. Absolutely well done. Another thing we want to have a look at is not being overly restrictive to speed that number up on the scale. And what I mean by that is a lot of the times we'll do something very drastic to try and speed up the rate of fat loss, okay? Now, again, that might be a little bit unsustainable, and that's something we want to steer away from. But again, it all comes down to those expectations. And the expectation should be, I want to do this in a sustainable manner. You want to tackle it in a manner that, yes, you've seen a shift on the scale. Yes, you've seen a shift in your body composition, but you're doing it in a manner that is sustainable. That's the expectations that we want at the end of the day, right? So again, just for anyone that is starting the health and fat loss expedition, no matter how you're starting, no matter what you are doing, whether it's just walking for 1 minute extra every single day, or walking an extra 1,000 steps every single day, or maybe you're adding vegetables to the plan and it's 1 meal per day that you're starting off with. Maybe there's a 100 gram loss on the scale. Maybe there's a 1 kilogram loss on the scale. Fucking well done. Absolutely well done. But let's work on those expectations and also know that not everything is about the scale. And if that scale shifts, well done. If that scale doesn't shift, it doesn't mean that you are doing anything wrong, because in the background, all those changes that I just mentioned now, those are changes that you are making. And those are changes that are benefiting your life. Okay, and those are changes that are helping you create a healthier lifestyle. So again, just to answer this message, you are not doing anything wrong, right? Just tweak your expectations, and this goes to absolutely every single one of you that are listening to this episode of the podcast. Be fucking proud of yourself for any little change that you are making, and don't let that number on the scale or a slower fat loss rate number on the scale be the thing that makes you less proud of yourself for making the bloody amazing changes that you are making. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you guys like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love, your friend who has not answered one DM on TikTok ever, Mandy.